Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing? I have a theory that you can learn everything you need to know in life from musical theater. And my name is Robert Schmehr. I oversee the mind-body therapy services with integrative medicine. And it's a great pleasure to meet with you this afternoon. The mission of mind-body therapies is really looking at the brain-mind interaction. And specifically, we're paying attention to the idea that no one has ever had a thought or a feeling that has not been a physical experience. The idea is that we use our brain, we use our brain, our mind uses the brain, and with the brain being the center of the nervous system, every thought and feeling flows through the entirety of the body. And conversely, every physical experience is holding hands with a thought and feeling. So we're looking at that bi-directional interaction and different ways to access its power to support physical and emotional health. And as we age, we gain more insight about how that works. So most important, I would like us to have some fun today. Have you been having fun so far today? Okay, great. The first reason that people seek mind-body therapies, and the first reason we go, is the same reason we go on vacation, same reason we go to the gym, it's to relax. But we don't want to be too relaxed. We want to have the optimal amount of tension. And so understanding how that works, kind of like a guitar string, it can't be too soft, it can't be too tight. We're studying the nervous system, we're studying the mind through the body to learn how to do that. And specifically, in the last 30 years, we've learned a lot about the ancient practices of meditation and hypnosis and guided imagery and visualization and contemplation from a biological and a neurological perspective. Through the work of neuroscience, we are now understanding how the human brain, the prefrontal cortex right here in the front, coordinates with the limbic system, which is the middle brain. And that's the part of our brain with the amygdala and the hippocampus that get activated whenever we are afraid or in physical pain. And we need to have a fight, flight, or freeze response, but we also need to know how to regulate it. And so paying attention to body-mind interactions is what we are going to be looking at today, and how that will support our overall health. So once again, the brain and the mind flow through the entirety of the body, through the nervous system, and are always going back and forth with different endocrine responses that either support immune function and healthy mood or limit immune function and create anxiety and depression. So neurons are getting fired every time we think, every time we see, every time we hear, and we're paying attention to that in more subtle ways, and it's getting studied through neuroscience. So in this presentation, I would like just to look at some basic things that we all do that we take for granted for the most part. And once again, I love this picture of the brain. The front here is the green part. And that's the part of the brain that we activate when we are reading or talking. It's the thing that makes us uniquely human. And it coordinates with the middle brain and then the primary functions of the brain. And depending on what we're thinking, what we're listening to, and how we're making meaning, it will either exacerbate or promote a relaxation response. It will either support immune function or slightly to incredibly lower it. So the first exercise for the brain is something that we all do. It's smiling. And something really interesting happens when we smile. Just by even observing someone smile, something happens to your parasympathetic system, which is the limbic system, where you feel safe. And doing that, people's respiratory system slows down, their stomach softens, and their ability to develop oxytocin, which is a hormone that we first experience when we're being nursed in the first hours of life. Both parent and child experience it. It's called the love hormone. It's the bonding hormone. And it supports immune function and mood. This is supported when we either smile or when we receive a smile or just look at a smile. It's important to pay attention to, because I wasn't smiling a minute ago. I was a little nervous and I was stumbling over my words. But remembering this in the back of our minds, we incorporate it. We also release the jaw when we smile. The jaw is the strongest hinge of the body. And as animals, we are hardwired to tighten it whenever we're afraid or angry. And by smiling, the jaw has to soften, and it coordinates with improved brain function. Staying intellectually active is something I believe everyone in this room is very good at, and that's why you're here today. Our ability to process information is understood as the most sophisticated because we are dialogic. And I'll be speaking more about that in a minute, how we are narrative creatures. And our use of language profoundly influences our physical and emotional well-being. Being intellectually active doesn't necessarily mean crossword puzzles, however. It means doing things that use cross-modal processing, so things that make you think critically, reading fiction, reading nonfiction, engaging in challenging conversations that are not of a confrontational nature. They can be confrontational, but confrontation sets up a different set of neural functions that might not be so good for the health. Many people do the crossword puzzle with the hopes that it is going to improve brain function. It helps you do crossword puzzles. But the research that you do in doing the crossword puzzles is the kind of intellectual activity that will support your overall health and longevity. I also said something about math. Doing math equations is not the kind of intellectual activity that supports overall health. It's doing the analytic thinking that underlies math that's going to support your, the kind of intellectual activity that supports immune function, mood, and longevity. So it's anything that would involve analytic thinking, imagination, creativity. So just less concrete, more abstract. Consciously relax. We are horrible at this. We have to really work hard to do it. In other cultures, it's not so hard. In Italy, they have a saying, la dolce far niente. And for many years in Europe, there has been a tradition which is falling down more and more of a siesta. As with the global economy, that's being lost. But in cultures where there is a tradition of having family meals, of having a work-life schedule that supports not only siesta but long vacation periods, there is a greater appreciation of how important it is to do nothing. There was a piece in the Science Times recently talking about how vacation was absolutely imperative to having good health and having good work performance. And yet we, as a culture, don't take adequate vacation to support our health. In this situation, conscious relaxation is consciously relaxing each part of the body. And we can do this in many different ways, and we all do it implicitly without realizing it. But remembering that when we do this, we support our cognitive function, our memory, and our mood. This is my favorite one, because it's something that we've been doing since the 20th week of gestation. We do it the first minutes of life. When you're tired and you're falling asleep in the car, you yawn and it revives you. When you arrive at your destination, it once again calms you down so that you can go to sleep. And when you wake in the morning, you yawn and it wakes you up. It simultaneously relaxes and stimulates every system of the body. And once again, if you notice what's happening here, the jaw is releasing. And in doing that, we are shifting the brain function. We are taking a much deeper breath so that the diaphragm is getting pushed down. Whenever we are anxious or needing to be active and thinking, the diaphragm moves faster and quicker. So it spontaneously pushes us into a relaxation response. One of the sad things that culturally is that we've all been, well, most of us have been socialized to think that yawning is a sign of boredom or it's rude. And you wouldn't want to yawn in front of me right now unless you wanted to insult me. It's fine. In fact, we're going to do it in a minute. And it is actually a mind-body exercise that is holding hands with some of the yogic breathing techniques. So what I'd like you to do right now, if you don't mind, is just uncross your feet and your hands. And we're going to do a conscious breathing exercise. Now, a couple of things about this. People say, oh, I'm not tired, so I can't do it. Or I just can't do it. Or I don't like to do it. Or it's not natural. That's fine. In this exercise, what I'd like you to do is just let your eyes close and know that everyone in the room is doing the same thing. And when I do this with people individually, I actually close my eyes in the room because they get too nervous with me looking at them. And I would like you to just fake 10 yawns. And I think that by the time you get to about 6 or 7, you're going to find yourself naturally falling into a yawning experience. And go up to a total of 20 yawns. And everybody just open the mouth big. You can lift your arms up over your head. And just keep yawning. Your own pace, really deeply, really slowly. You may notice that you have tears. And as you do this, allow your abdomen to soften more and more. Let your hands just come down, just like you would if you're a baby when you just, or even when you wake up in the morning and stretch. That's what I meant. You don't have to keep your hands up. Just continue to yawn really big. And you can allow your hands just come down and allow yourself to just sit for 1 minute silently with your eyes closed, directing awareness to your breath. If you're able to breathe in and out through your nose, notice that. Notice if there's any shifts, physical or emotional. Yawning supports alertness and concentration. It supports your metabolism. It increases your memory. It helps you be introspective. It relaxes the entire body. Athletes yawn before performance, as well as musicians. It fine-tunes our sense of time. And it actually increases our empathy and social awareness by tapping into the embodied mind in new ways. You can allow your eyes to float back open. And I'd like to hear just from somebody their experience, a pleasant one or an unpleasant one. Maybe you didn't find it as interesting as I do, which is absolutely fine. So meditation, by a show of hands, not to embarrass you, who in this room thinks they have does practice meditation? Okay. And who in this room has practiced meditation and has at times, if not frequently, found it quite frustrating? Okay. And who has also found it very beneficial? Okay. So there's a lot of ideas about meditation. It gets studied a lot in terms of its health benefits. Usually when I ask people to tell me what they mean by meditation, they talk about having a thought-free state and entering into a transcendent state and how they're not very good at it and how their mind keeps chattering. But that is only one of the outcomes of meditation. Meditation itself is simply the focus of the energy of the mind. And so right now you are informally, hopefully meditating on what I'm saying, or you might also be meditating on your impressions of what I'm saying, liking it or not liking it. But we can just think of it as focused awareness. If you look in the dictionary, it will always use the word concentration. I don't love that word because it sounds so effortful, but we're just looking at different ways to focus awareness, and there's 3 main reasons we meditate. First is to support a relaxation response. One of my teachers, John Kabat-Zinn, says it's like taking a mini vacation. When there's a relaxation response, we also have the ability to self-regulate physical and emotional pain. Through this, studying the mind through this body, think of it like a pond that calms down. The mind is very active, and then it might calm down for a period of meditation. And in that time, we have the opportunity to have increased psychological insight, which is why most meditations are linked up with different forms of insight, whether it's spiritual insight or psychological insight or health insights. And then the third reason people meditate is for spiritual insight, which is a personal journey. It's not something that we generally do here in the center. It is something that pastoral care would do, and everybody does in their own way. The foundation of all mind-body therapies and all meditation is this concept, mindfulness, which we hear a lot about. The reason we hear so much about it is that for the past 40 years, it's gotten a great deal of research through the work of John Kabat-Zinn and Saki Santorelli up in University of Massachusetts, Worcester. And if you look at this definition, it's paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment, as if your life depends on it. And John's curriculum, called mindfulness-based stress reduction, is founded on the idea that we're not good at this. Our brains and minds have been collecting information since we were in our mother's stomachs to learn from yesterday and plan for tomorrow. All of that information gets categorized in terms of healthy, unhealthy, pleasant, unpleasant, and over time it very quickly becomes reified into judgmental processes such as nice, mean, pretty, ugly, moral, immoral, and it's inescapable for all of us. The thing is, when we're thinking of the past or the future, with a judgmental process, we are creating an anxiety response. The belly tightens, the cardiovascularism goes off, our inflammatory hormones expand, our ability to absorb serotonin decreases. Do you know where your body has the highest percentage of serotonin receptor sites? You said it. Yes, he said in the stomach, in the GI system. Most people think it's the brain. Now, if we're walking around New York all tense, my belly's tense right now because I'm working. And I'm paying attention to that tension. So when the belly is tight, when we don't give it the opportunity to have that conscious relaxation, our body's ability to absorb the serotonin, which is an essential hormone to maintain healthy mood and relaxation and good concentration, it goes down. So simply by softening the belly, softening the breath, we improve our mood and we improve our immune function. So through mindful awareness, through mind-body awareness, what we learn to do is to self-regulate. We learn to pay attention to the physical, the somatic, visceral experience of emotion, and then to move with it differently. And people are happier when they're able to regulate their anger. Specifically, when you learn certain techniques like conscious yawning or soft belly breathing or different ways to redirect awareness and give yourself a mini vacation, some of the inflammatory hormones that make us reactive calm down. And then our ability to be responsive improves. So we ideally learn this in the first couple of years of life. We learn how to self-regulate when we're teething, when we're nursing, when we're weaning, when we learn how to play in the playground. And so we learn how to self-regulate and mutually regulate. And everyone does it differently, but meditation is a way that we self-regulate. And then we learn how to bring it into our interpersonal communication. So all mind-body therapies and all meditation practices have these attitudes and these qualities. Beginner's mind is something we cultivate in all mind-body therapies. When you're the expert and you know all the answers, then you hinder your ability to learn from each new experience. One of the nice things about working here in a teaching hospital is we have all kinds of students. And the students actually help the attendings learn because they see things that the attendings can't see because they are seeing it through their expert paradigm. And the invitation here is, as you were saying, is if life is a continuum, your experience of your body today is different than when you were 25 and the same. And so how can all of your experiences today give you an opportunity to see to a window into new opportunities for awareness, health, creativity? Non-judging is the hardest one. And that's just because we're hardwired to be hierarchical. But we give it a break, and we give ourselves a break when we find ourselves doing it. And so what is it that we trust? Your own experience. So don't trust me, trust your own experience. You're studying your subjectivity. Aerobic exercise is actually better for your brain than meditation. This was a drag for me, but it makes your brain work better. The main reason is that it helps your parasympathetic system become more harmonious, which is to say your middle brain. Think of the brain like this. This is the front, this is the human part, The middle brain is the part that responds to stress or danger, with the amygdala being more activated during dangerous or frightening times or confusing times. And then that hinders our ability to concentrate and to have a healthy mood. So exercise moves every system of the body. Aerobic exercise in particular, once again, think of the yawning, think of the breathing, think of conscious relaxation. What's at the very center of the body? The diaphragm. We're looking at different ways to help the diaphragm move more deeply. When we do that, we support the body's ability to relax and to recover, to rejuvenate. The number one way that the body detoxifies? Exhaling. Most of us exhale shallow. Me right now, I'm not taking a full breath. I can't do it and talk, but I will later. So we need to practice, we need to incorporate this into our life. The more vigorous the exercise, the better. That means different things for different people. I've watched Donna Wilson, I've taken Donna Wilson's classes with no weights. They're very vigorous. It's a trip. So we're always studying the mind through the body, but movement is key to supporting healthy brain function. I had mentioned earlier that we are dialogic beings. And this is the second most important exercise for the brain. And you had asked a question about anger and how meditation might help with anger. Absolutely. But the way we become human is through our initial dialogues, which are pre-verbal in the first minutes of life. And they continue throughout life. But really, it's the first 3 years when our way of forming attachments, of making meaning, gets formed and then it gets built upon. So finding ways to engage in healthy dialogue that is more than just talking about concrete, specific, measurable things, but ideas, concepts, abstract thinking, ideas of meaning. Just in your own imagination, where do you imagine these people are? In the kitchen. Yes, in the kitchen. What country? Yeah. Yeah, Norway. So we see different things. The point is, the world is as you see it. I see Ireland. And then once I get rid of that, then I see the South Bronx. And I see my grandmother. So I see the South Bronx. So what we're talking about here is something called social neurobiology. We are interpersonally connected through our nervous systems. And if we do not have dialogue with others, certain parts of our brain function collapse. Our immune system collapses, and our ability to be responsive and hopeful in our lives is decreased. So once again, we're talking about this concept. One of the concepts here is mirror neurons, and how we are always mirroring back and forth to one another. About 20 years ago now, there were some researchers in Italy. It was the middle of the summer. They were doing brain scans on monkeys, and somebody came in with some gelato, and the researchers started eating their gelato, didn't disconnect the monkeys, and realized that the monkey's brain was being activated in the same place as if they were eating the gelato. And from this, we came up with a new field of exploration of looking at this interpersonal neurobiology. And it's why psychotherapy works, it's why good parenting works, it's why good doctor-patient relationships work, and it's also why they don't work. The good news is, knowing this, we can attract ourselves to good company. And when I was in school, we were taught that the brain stopped growing after 25. That's incorrect. The brain grows, as you said, on a continuum through the entirety of our lives. Another thing about the aging brain, we remember things differently. We remember nouns less acutely in our older years than we did when we were younger, but our ability for abstract thinking and meaning thinking and the things that we would call wisdom are increased. So we have a greater depth based on more historical experiences. The only time that neuroplasticity of the brain is stopped is if there is some sort of a brain trauma or a medical treatment that would injure the brain, or Alzheimer's. Otherwise, and even then, we're still looking at different ways to promote neuroplasticity of the brain, which means our ability to live on a continuum and respond creatively always. And so this is the concept of mirror neurons, mirroring back and forth. So earlier, when I was a little nervous, somebody was catching my mirror neurons and saying, I can't understand you. Makes perfectly good sense, because I was having a hard time thinking. So, and once again, this is to the idea that it's the relationship that heals. We've all experienced this. We've experienced healthy relationships and toxic relationships. So we're looking at our interpersonal relationships and then our relationships with ourselves. Brain, mind, and relationships is the triangle of reality that we study in mind-body therapies. That said, the best exercise for the brain is this thing called faith. Now, the person who did all this neuroscience research is a guy named Andrew Newberg. He's an agnostic, so he's not a man of faith. But he's done a lot of studying on why different faith systems and religious systems support or do not support health. Now, I was speaking with someone before this session who asked me a question about, she was using the term magical thinking, using creative imagination, using setting goals for their health, and could I speak to that? So the idea of faith here is the idea that we always have an opportunity to respond creatively, that there's always new opportunities. So if this fellow actually gets the tennis ball out of the water, I will be so impressed. But what matters is that he has the joy and energy to give it a try. And that supports neural functions that correspond with lowered inflammatory responses, improved immune function, improved responsiveness to find different options. We all are dealing with something lost and something gained. People who have faith are part of the solution. And it supports your immune function and your mood. Once we lose faith, there's no hope. Does this make sense? Yeah. And we all lose faith once in a while, but noticing that and figuring out where things went south and how do we redirect is important. So the word magical thinking has many meanings, but I think this idea of being creative, being imaginative, having a focus, when there's a clear intention, there is a clear attainment, all of this type of brain function helps our mind and brain share information more successfully to support health, physical and emotional. That's a little koan for everybody. He who knows, knows not. He who knows not, knows. If you go to the MSKCC website and go to integrative medicine, we have some, in addition to, there's lots of, there are many educational tools. In the mind-body therapy tools, in the at-home tools, you'll see 4 different guided meditations. One of them is a guided visualization. There's a meditation on music. There's a pranayama or a yogic breathing meditation, very short. There's body scan. There's more than 4. They're wonderful. They're a great resource. They're free. You can listen to them on your computer, on your phone, and also just reach out to us because there are many wonderful resources that are portable and affordable. And so once again, the idea of magical thinking or creative thinking. Deeds cannot dream what dreams can do. So much of science, so much of philosophy has happened when people are either daydreaming or dreaming at night. And Freud calls it the royal road to the unconscious. It's been valued in every culture. In our culture, we seem to devalue it. Oh, it's just a dream. But I encourage everyone here to capture the power of their dreams and to see what can happen. So thank you very much. I'm available if you have any questions.